I recall the devotion, the lights, and the cameras. Now, it seems like a different lifetime. I'm Ava Johnson, and I used to be the most popular person in Hollywood. However, it is no longer who I am. Jake entered my home office, where I was working quietly and comfortably while surrounded by fabric samples and designs for our next fashion line. Jake had a little grin on his face. Jake handed out an old magazine cover with me looking gorgeous in an evening gown and said, "Remember this? The world at your feet, Ava." Taking the magazine from him, I laughed. A lifetime ago, Jake. Now, it's all about hemlines and textures, not red carpets and paparazzi. His gaze lingered on the magazine as he leaned on the desk. You left it all at the peak, Ava. Sometimes I wonder if you regret it. I turned to face my spouse, who used to be my boss, but is now also a business partner. I've never regretted a single day since leaving Hollywood, especially the day I chose to spend the rest of my life with you. Jake grinned more than before, yet there was a new gloom in his eyes. I've always admired that about you, Ava, your decisiveness. But sometimes, I miss the limelight, the thrill of it all. I extended my hand and touched his hand. We have a different kind of thrill now, building something together. Isn't that worth more? Though he hesitated a little, he nevertheless nodded. Of course, it is. It's just different, you know? With a nostalgic grin on my face, I closed the photo book, each image serving as a reminder of my brilliant days in Hollywood. I turned away from the past and got ready to enter the present, where I would be collaborating with Jake in the fashion industry and embarking on a brand new journey full with opportunities and challenges. The buzz of sewing machines and the talk of designers filled the air as I walked through the hallways of our fashion firm. It had its own attraction, even though it was quite different from Hollywood's bright lights and cameras. As usual, Jake was there, his gaze glued to a spreadsheet, the ever-productive manager, even in this new endeavor of ours. "Hello, Jake," I said as I slid into the chair next to him. "How's the budget looking for next month's line?" His eyes just met mine as he glanced up, a little grin pulling at his lips. "It's on track, Ava. We might even come in under budget." I cried out, "That's great!" Once upon a time, such news would set off a furious debate, but of late, our talks had grown less personal and more commercial. I saw him go back to work, his brow deepening with concentration. "You've been working non-stop, Jake. Why don't we go out tonight? Dinner at that new Italian place?" He paused, groaned, and closed his laptop. "I don't know, Ava. I have a lot on my plate." I leaned forward to attempt to look him in the eye. "You need a break, Jake. We both do. Remember how we used to make time for us?" At last, he turned to face me, his countenance inscrutable. "Yeah, I remember. But things are different now, Ava. We're not just a couple. We're business partners. It's not as simple." "Is that all we are now?" "Business partners?" I thought to myself, frustrated. Jake sidestepped my query by massaging his temples. "It's not just that, Ava. It's just... I don't know. Let's talk about this later." I began to say, but was interrupted by his phone ringing. With a quick peek at the caller ID, he got up quickly. He said, "I need to take this," and started for the door. "We'll talk later, Ava, I promise." In the midst of the chaos that was our flourishing fashion company, I started to see little changes in Jake's personality. His once bright eyes were often obscured by an unsaid sadness. After a long night of planning meetings with the city lights glittering below, the fissures in our once flawless alliance eventually began to show. The sun was lowering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, casting golden reflections as Jake and I sat across from one another in our opulent living room. Despite the demanding day at the fashion studio, I couldn't stop thinking about new and inventive ideas. At that time, Jake entered with heavier-than-normal footsteps. I put down a stack of fabric swatches and said, "Jake, you've seemed distant lately. Is everything okay?" I was very worried since he hadn't been as lively as normal these previous 2 weeks. He traced the rim of his coffee cup in hesitation. His voice faltering, he said, "Ava, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you." With attention, I leaned in. "What is it? You know you can tell me anything." His eyes met mine with a mixture of resolve and trepidation as he inhaled deeply. It's about my parents' 60th anniversary. They've always dreamed of visiting France, especially Paris. I was thinking, maybe we could organize a trip for them. It would mean the world to them. The thought was unexpected to me. Paris? That sounds wonderful, but you know my schedule is packed with the upcoming collection. I don't think I can make it. I know, he quickly said, but I was thinking I could take them. Just a family trip, you know. Give you some space to work without distractions. Something flickered, but was it guilt? Swept across his face. You'd do that? Go without me? I questioned, my gut knotting up strangely. Yes, I mean, it's important to them, and I want to be there for them. You understand, right? His eyes were beseeching. I gently nodded, ignoring the uneasiness that began to seep into my heart. Of course I understand. Family is important, and I trust you, Jake. With a look of relief on his face, he grinned. Thank you, Ava. I knew you'd understand. You always do. But even while he was talking, I couldn't get rid of the uneasy sensation I had. Jake had never really shown interest in planning family vacations, much less taking them. His joy seemed forced as he spoke more about the trip, and my mind raced with unresolved questions. Ava, it'll be great. Just a week or two in Paris. I'll handle everything, the flights, hotel, everything. You won't have to worry about a thing. Before I could stop them, the words, "Are you sure you can manage all that? With your work and the finances?" tumbled out. He laughed, a sound that almost missed his eyes. Don't worry about the finances. I've got it covered. This is for my parents, after all. Though the talk veered off subject, my thoughts were fixed on the trip to Paris. There was something wrong, and I was going to find out what. I had no idea that this journey would reveal a labyrinth of lies and secrets that I never would have predicted. I was sitting in my roomy, well-decorated office, which had awards from my acting career hanging on the walls. Long shadows created by the sunshine coming through the blinds seemed to reflect the increasing gloom in my thoughts. I clutched the credit card statement, the numbers staring accusingly at me, and my fingers shook a little. I had no idea that France was charging me more than $10,000. Jake, I murmured, maintaining a calm tone despite my internal anguish. His confident gait seemed more like arrogance as he entered. Yes, Ava, he said, smiling naively, not realizing the impending tempest. I raised the statement. My tone was cool, but there was no mistaking the steel behind it all. Can you explain this? His grin wavered as he took a quick look at the page. Oh, that. It's for the trip. I thought it would be a nice surprise for my folks. I said, a nice surprise with my credit card? And it seemed cold between us. He retreated a step, his guard going up. Look, Ava, I thought you wouldn't mind. You're always busy with your work, and I wanted to do something special for them. Special? I said, letting out a brief, sour chuckle. You call spending over $10,000 behind my back special? His face were etched with irritation as he ran a hand through his hair. You're overreacting. It's just money, Ava. We have plenty of it. I said as I got up, my pulse thumping. Just money. It's not about the money, Jake. It's about trust. Something you've clearly broken. His eyes narrowed as he gave me a glance. He made motions about the workplace, saying, What's happened to you, Ava? You used to be fun, carefree. Now all you care about is your business, and this is lies. You didn't even have the grace to inquire, I replied, gesturing to the statement. Jake's face became stern. I don't need to ask for permission, Ava. I'm not just your employee. I'm your husband. A husband who sneaks around using my credit card for a lavish trip? That's not a partnership, Jake. That's theft. He shook his head and mocked. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's not like I gambled it away or bought something frivolous. Frivolous? Reverberated around the space laden with sarcasm. You call a $10,000 expense on a whim not frivolous? Jake became red in the face. I've supported you through everything, Ava. When you wanted to retire at the peak of your career, I was there, When you wanted to start this fashion venture, I was there, and this is how you repay me? Repay you? I let out a chilly chuckle. By letting you use me as your personal ATM? His clamped jaw would not release. I inhaled deeply, attempting to quiet the furious tempest within of me. This isn't just about the money, Jake. It's about respect, honesty, qualities you seem to have forgotten. Jake averted his gaze to avoid seeing me. I thought you'd be happy. I wanted to do something nice. By lying and stealing? I said in a quiet, skeptic's voice. The air was heavy with unspoken words and unrecognized facts as we stood there. The guy before me was unfamiliar. His once familiar features concealed a different person. At last, scarcely able to raise my voice above a whisper, I muttered, I need time to think. Jake gave a mute nod, feeling the disagreement leave him. With his thoughts and increased determination, he turned and exited the room, leaving me alone. A chilly revelation overcame me as I examined the safe carefully, which held our company's most sensitive financial tools. The black card, which is essential for large transactions, was noticeably missing. This stark emptiness not only validated my worst fears about Jake's treachery, but it also dealt the last blow to the confidence I had laboriously cultivated in him over the years. With the sun dimming and lengthy shadows thrown over my workplace, I decided to take a stance and devise a plan of retaliation that would lead to an unforeseen turn in our entwined lives. As I sat by myself in the stillness, I inhaled deeply as the credit card company's number gleamed on the screen of my phone. I said to myself in a whisper, it's now or never. Only once did the phone ring before a kind voice answered, Good evening, Ms. Johnson. How can we assist you today? I need to report unauthorized use of my credit card and request an immediate suspension of the card, I said, trying not to let my emotions show through. There was a silent moment. Certainly, Ms. Johnson. May I have the card details, please? My thoughts immediately returned to Jake's devious smirk before he departed for Paris as I gave the information. His falsely innocent voice was nearly audible to me once again. I sat there feeling a weird combination of empowerment and grief when I hung up. Once again, the phone buzzed, and I saw Jake's name flickering on the screen. As I responded, my heart was racing. Hey, Ava, we're having a great time here in Paris. The hotel is fantastic. His voice annoyed me. It was so happy and unaware. I'm glad to hear that, Jake. How's the family enjoying it? Oh, they love it. Listen, Ava, about the credit card. His voice faltered and was replaced by a momentary pause. I sensed that the time had arrived. I pretended not to know. What about the credit card, Jake? I questioned. Well, there's been a bit of a mix-up. The hotel says the card's not working. Must be some mistake, right? I could feel the pleasure of hearing the fear seep into his voice, but I maintained my composure. Oh, is that so? That's strange. Maybe you should check with the bank. He was clearly frustrated now. Ava, can you just fix this? It's embarrassing. Jake, I can't help with that. I actually reported the card for unauthorized use. It won't be working anymore. The person on the other end was struck silent. I could practically see his mouth falling in shock. Ava, why would you do that? I know about the trip, Jake, and I know about the card. You've been lying to me, and I can't let that go. His voice became more urgent and louder. Ava, you don't understand. I did this for us, for my family. I sneered. For us? No, Jake. You did this for yourself. You didn't think about me, about us, when you decided to betray my trust. His rage crackled in the line. You're ruining everything, Ava. You can't just leave me stranded here. I can. And I have, Jake. You need to face the consequences of your actions. I was left with the echoes of our chat as the connection went silent. I reclined, experiencing an odd sensation of resolution. It was the first move in clearing the darkness of deceit and treachery from my life. With a glass of wine in hand and my thoughts racing like a turbulent sea, I watched the skyline vanish into the darkness. Jake's name was showing on the screen as the phone on the table buzzed once again. Ignoring it, I let my thoughts to go back to what had brought us to this point. It had been a simple yet efficient design. Cut off the money and let Jake to experience the pain of his own treachery. However, a part of me shuddered when I learned of their struggle in the slums of Paris. Was this going to be too much? No, a voice within me protested. He caused this to happen. At last, after the 100th ring, I answered the phone. Jake said, "Ava, please, you have to help us," in a frenzied tone that was unlike his normally collected manner. My voice sounded cold, distant. "Jake, you sound distressed. Is the Parisian air not to your liking? This isn't a joke, Ava. We're stuck in some hellhole. You have to send money. Get us out of here." I could feel his despair, but it strengthened my determination. "Oh, you mean the funds you so liberally spent from our company? The same funds you used to betray me? Ava, listen. I'm sorry, all right? I messed up. But this is too much. We're in danger here." His voice carried the horror and understanding that he was out of control. A part of me wanted to give in and put a stop to this act, but the betrayal was too profound and the scars too raw. "Jake, remember when you said a wife should be like a maid to her husband? That I should be grateful for your magnanimous presence in my life?" "Ava, please, that was a stupid thing to say. I didn't mean it." "But you did, Jake. And now, here we are. You're in a situation of your own making. You chose this path when you decided to use me, to steal from me." On the other end, there was quiet, a thick, oppressive silence. Finally, my voice a whisper against the tempest building inside of me, I replied, "I'll think about what to do. But for now, Jake, welcome to your new reality." The call ended. With my phone in hand, I sat there feeling the pressure of my choices bearing down on me. Was I losing a piece of myself in my quest for vengeance? Had I accepted the brutal reality of the environment Jacques had placed me in, or had I gone further? I've been engulfed in a tornado of feelings ever since Jacques' folks left for America. As I sat in my large living room, which was suddenly too quiet, I thought about the divorce papers that were in front of me. The pen I was holding seemed remarkably heavy, as if it carried the weight of a failed marriage. A soft but forceful knock on the door was heard. It was Jake's mother, Marie. There was a noticeable tension when she intervened. She said, "Hello, Ava," in a tone that was both kind and nervous. I gestured to the couch and said, "Marie, please come in." After a little period of silent sitting, she said, "Ava, we are so sorry. We had no idea about what Jake was doing." I breathed deeply. "I know, Marie. This isn't your fault." Tears were pooling in her eyes. "But, Ava, he's still our son. Can't you give him another chance, for the sake of the good times?" I felt a twinge of resolution and grief as I shook my head. "Marie, I've given Jake many chances. This time it's more than just our marriage. It's about respect, trust. He broke something fundamental." "I understand, dear. But where does this leave us?" she said, reaching for my hand. "You are family, Marie. That doesn't change. I just can't continue being Jake's wife," I said, giving her a gentle hand squeezy. The door opened once again, and my sister-in-law Linda entered with a look of contempt and rage on her face. "So, you're just giving up on him, after everything?" My voice was firm but laced with fury. "Everything? Linda, do you understand what your brother did?" "He made a mistake, Ava. You're supposed to stand by your husband," Linda said. "A mistake, Linda? He stole from our business, lied to me, and took advantage of me." "That's not a mistake, that's a decision," I shot back, becoming impatient. "Linda is just upset. We all are. This is hard for us, too," Marie cut in. I lowered my voice. "I know it's hard. It's hard for me, too. But I need to think about what's best for me now." After a protracted silence, Marie said, "What will you do now?" Once again. "I'll continue with the fashion line. Focus on my work. I need to move on. Find peace." "Peace? You're ruining our family for peace?" Linda quickly jumped up. I firmly answered, "No, Linda. I'm saving myself," with a voice full of newly discovered power. Placing a hand on Linda's shoulder, Marie rose up and said, "Let's go, dear. Ava has made her decision." I stared at the divorce papers as they walked away. I inhaled deeply before signing my name, each letter representing a step forward in a new chapter of my life. It was a choice driven by a severe desire for self-preservation rather than resentment. A chapter came to an end, and a new one was calling. I sat in my large office as the sun was setting, the warm warmth of the setting light falling on the designs strewn all over my desk. The divorce from Jake had been finalized for many months now, and life had found a new, powerful rhythm. Emily, my assistant, knocked softly and came in. "Ava, your 6 p.m. meeting was rescheduled. Do you need anything else for the day?" Grinning, I glanced up. "No, thank you, Emily. Actually, wait, could you get an update on Jake's situation in Paris?" Emily paused, her look a mixture of interest and worry. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Yes," I firmly said. "It's part of moving on." She gave a nod and walked out. My phone rang a few moments later. "Ava Johnson speaking." "Ava, it's Emily. I've got some news about Jake. He's still in Paris, struggling. His sister and her husband lost their jobs and are with him. It's not looking great." Leaning back, I expressed my complicated feelings by saying, "Thank you, Emily. That's all I needed to know." After the phone rang, I stared out the window, lost in my own thoughts. Once again, the door opened, letting my mother-in-law, Sarah, enter. There was a growing warmth in her eyes ever since she'd sided with me. "Ava, dear, I wanted to thank you again for your understanding. We never imagined Jake would—" I extended a hand. "Sarah, you don't need to explain. What matters is that we've moved past it." Her hand reached for mine as she drew nearer. "You've handled this with such grace, Ava, and despite everything, I want you to know that you're still family to us." The corners of my eyes were pinched with tears. "That means more to me than you can imagine, Sarah." Emily stuck her head back in at that moment. "Ava, your next appointment is here." I got up and said, "Thank you, Emily. I'll be right out." With a fresh sense of purpose. I saw a reflection of myself in the mirror as Sarah was leaving. The mirror revealed a lady strengthened and self-assured by adversity. As I left my office, I was prepared to take on any obstacles that were in my way. With Jake, the last chapter had ended. My narrative starts in a tiny, warm home where my parents are full of love and joy. My name is Amy. They were my heroes because they both gave their lives to protect and serve as police officers. Even though they were often absent from school because of employment, I recall the warmth of those formative years. Dad's pager rang furiously one calm evening as we sat around the dinner table. He and Mom shared a knowing glance. Mom gently responded, "Sorry, Pumpkin," while holding my hand. "Duty calls." Trying to be courageous, I nodded. "Will you be back soon?" My dad tossed my hair. "As soon as we can, kiddo. You know we're always here, right in your heart." I spent the night with Aunt Martha, the neighbor and reliable friend of my parents. Although Aunt Martha was always sweet, she came off as severe. Cradling my teddy bear, I sat in her living room, trying not to close my eyes. The doorbell rang abruptly. I heard agitated, whispered conversations as Aunt Martha rushed to answer it. I tiptoed to the hallway as my curiosity overcame me. With his hat in his hands, a tall guy dressed in a police uniform waited at the entrance. Aunt Martha shouted out to me, "Amy, sweetheart," her voice shaking. "This is Officer Williams. He has something to tell us." Looking up, I saw the officer's serious expression. His voice was soft as he said, "Amy, I'm so sorry. There was an incident tonight. Your parents, they were very brave. They saved a lot of lives, but they didn't make it." I looked at him intently while the words continued to repeat in my mind, meaningless. I questioned, perplexed. "Didn't make it? Where did they go?" Officer Williams met my eyes with a kneel. "They're gone, Amy. They were heroes, but sometimes heroes have to make the ultimate sacrifice." I argued, "No, they're coming back," as an odd numbness started to creep up on me. They always come back. Even with Aunt Martha's arms around me, I felt uneasy and alienated. My universe had broken into a million pieces, where the assurance of my parents' love and protection had formerly resided. I moved in with my aunt right away after the death. I arrived to Aunt Martha's home on a chilly evening, holding on to the one family picture I had managed to rescue. The mansion seemed bigger and more impressive than I had imagined, towering above me as I cautiously entered. Aunt Martha's voice boomed in the large corridor. "Welcome, Amy." But her tone was more formal than kind. Her features were sharp and seemed to be permanently engraved in a scowl. She was a tall lady. I said, "Thank you, Aunt Martha," and gripped my little purse a bit harder. Linda came bounding down the stairs at that moment, her eyes examining every inch of me. "So, you're going to live with us now?" she said, a hint of contempt in her tone that I would soon come to know all too well. Aunt Martha said, "Yes, Linda," before I could reply. "Your cousin will be staying with us from now on. You two should get along." Linda rolled her eyes and sneered. "We'll see about that," she said, speaking too loudly for me to hear. That evening's dinner was a painful affair. Feeling Linda's eyes glaring at me as I picked at my meal, she said, "So, Amy?" a wicked grin playing on her lips. "Tell us about your parents' last heroic act." I froze, the memory's anguish cutting right through me. Aunt Martha gave Linda a stern look. "Linda, that's enough," she informed him firmly. But Linda wouldn't give up. "Oh, come on. We all know they were just cops. Nothing special. I bet they weren't even good at it." My eyes hurt with tears. I wanted to yell, to protect my parents' dignity, but my voice would not come out. With a sigh, Aunt Martha said to me, "Amy, dear, you must be tired. Why don't you go to your room?" Her eyes softening somewhat. With gratitude for the break, I nodded. "Welcome to your new home, cousin," Linda said loudly enough for me to hear as I got to my feet. The security and affection I had previously experienced were replaced with a chilly apathy and, in Linda's case, overt animosity. Those early years in my aunt's home were when the burden of unsaid anguish started to weigh heavily on me. Every day blended into the next, a swirl of indiscernible side looks and quiet murmurs that I would never fully comprehend. My loneliness was always there, with Linda's voice echoing through the thin walls and the laughing and jeers coming from outside. "Pathetic, Amy," a snarky voice from the corridor said. "Linda, always hiding in here, drawing your stupid pictures." I bit my lip to keep from crying and didn't say anything. With a smug look and penetrating gaze, Linda emerged as the door cracked open. She leaned against the doorframe and mocked. "Did you hear me? Or are you deaf as well as weird?" "I heard you," I said, avoiding eye contact. Linda's voice softened, but I knew it was a trap. "Why don't you fight back? Stand up for yourself?" she said. "I'm just tired of this game and I just want to be left alone," I said. With malicious glints in her eyes, Linda laughed and said, "But where's the fun in that? You know, I told everyone at school about your little hobby. They had quite the laugh." I felt a familiar wave of powerlessness and rage and balled my fists. My voice, clogged with unshed tears, was barely audible as I said, "Why are you doing this to me?" Linda sighed. "Because I can. Because you're an easy target. And because nobody cares about you, not even Auntie." The thought of Aunt made me sting a little. She had always been cold and contemptuous, never a mother figure. "Aunt doesn't get it," I said in response. Linda said with a chilly chuckle, "Understand what? That you're a loser?" I raised my head and eventually met her gaze. "I wish you could just leave me alone." Linda laughed. "Wishful thinking, cousin. This is just how life is. You better get used to it." She laughed as she walked out the door after that. As I sat there, I had a smaller than usual sense of insignificance. Tears filled my eyes, blurring the drawings in my book. That was when I recognized things needed to change, in the depressing alone of my room. I have to stop living this way. However, I was held back by my dread of the unknown and what was beyond these walls. I closed my eyes, longing for a life and a planet that were different. One in which I might live freely and use my paintings as more than simply a means of escape, a world in which I was more than just Amy, the girl who everyone teased and mocked. However, wishes were just that, ephemeral, impermanent, vanishing like smoke in the wind. So I remained in my room, a prisoner of my own worries, and the only company I had in the never-ending, resonant solitude was my drawings. The combination of Linda's brutality and my aunt's apathy during my last days of high school destroyed me and made me a shadow in the middle of my own turmoil. That's when, on the eve of my 18th birthday, I took a bold decision and stepped out of my comfort zone when I left my aunt's home in hopes of meeting Grace by coincidence, who would ultimately light my way. It seems like yesterday when I recall the day I first met Grace. I was walking aimlessly after the horrible prom dress incident at my aunt's place, my head a tornado of hopelessness and uncertainty. The city streets were chilly and uninviting until I came across a little convenience shop, the bright brightness of which stood in sharp contrast to the gloom that pervaded my inner being. My eyes red from sobbing, I wandered aimlessly around the aisles as I entered. I noticed the cashier, who would later become my guardian angel, for the first time at that point. She said, softly, but with real worry in her voice, "Rough night, huh?" I looked up and saw her kind gaze. "You could say that?" I shot back, trying desperately to put on a grin. Her expression was empathetic as she looked over my belongings. "I'm Grace. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. And not just because it's my job." I whispered, "I'm Amy," after she said something so frank and straightforward. "I don't even know where to start." "I have all night. Why don't you start from the beginning?" Grace remarked, pointing to the empty shop. I totally opened myself to a stranger who would soon grow to be my closest confidant, right there. I told her about living with my aunt and Linda, the terrible event, my parents, and the ongoing bullying. I spoke about how I felt like a shadow in a house that never seemed like mine, unwanted and invisible. Grace listened, her face displaying a mixture of grief and rage, her voice filled with emotion. "That's just terrible, Amy. No one should ever go through that. I can't go back there. What am I going to do now?" I replied, sounding dejected. "You know, I have a spare room at my place. It's not much, but you're welcome to stay, at least until you figure things out," Grace said in a startling manner. It surprised me. "You don't even know me, so why would you help me?" I questioned, perplexed by her generosity. She said with a kind and comforting grin, "Because everyone deserves a chance at a better life, especially after what you've been through. Let me be the one to give you that chance." I was unable to speak. I had never received such politeness from anybody before. With tears starting to fill up in my eyes, I eventually managed to utter, I don't know what to say. "Thank you, Grace." She offered me not only a place to stay, but also a job, saying, "Don't mention it. Just promise me you'll give life another shot. And hey, if you're up for it, I could use some help around here. What do you say?" I nodded and said, "Yes, I'd like that very much," feeling a wave of relief sweep over me. That was the first night of my new existence. Grace became into more than simply a friend. She became my family, my mentor, and my sister. I got the courage I needed from her to face the outside world once again. The area I now named my refuge was filled with a warm glow as sunshine streamed through the curtains. I had moved in with Grace a few months before, and every day seemed like a step toward erasing the memories of my past. Grace said, "Morning, Amy," with a smile as she welcomed me into the kitchen. Her flour-dusted apron revealed her as she turned pancakes. I said, "Good morning, Grace," with a heart full of appreciation for this lady who had unexpectedly become my guardian angel. "You know, Amy, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time you considered going back to school or finding something you're passionate about," Grace said, as she set a plate of pancakes in front of me as I sat at the table. She then poured us each a cup of coffee. My old fears were biting at me as I paused, saying, I don't know, Grace. After everything, I'm not sure I can." Grace took a seat next to me and looked at me with compassion. "Amy, you've been through so much, but it's not your entire story. You have so much to offer, so much potential. Don't let your past dictate your future. Her remarks struck a chord with me and gave me optimism that I hadn't felt in a long time. A glimmer of excitement ignited in my breast as I said, "Do you really think I can do it?" "I'm sure you can." Grace comfortingly smiled. "You're stronger than you realize, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way." Her steadfast faith in me provided me with the much-needed support. I started to imagine, for the first time in a long time, a life full with opportunities, one in which my resilience would define me rather than my history. I said, "Thank you, Grace," in a very emotional voice. "Thank you for believing in me." Grace extended her arm to softly grasp my hand. "We're in this together, Amy. You're not alone anymore." I discovered not just a haven to stay, but also a place to develop and heal, where I could once again trust and appreciate myself in Grace's loving arms. I can't help but reflect on the moment when my life turned around, and I found happiness I never would have imagined as I sit here and watch the sun set beyond the horizon. I first met Michael while I was living with Grace and gradually putting the pieces of my history back together. "I think he likes you," Grace said, nudging me one day in the bakery, her mischievous eyes shining brightly. Michael was a frequent client who was always courteous and had an eye-catching grin. My cheeks started to flush. "Me?" "No, Grace, you must be mistaken," I said. I felt the entire idea was ridiculous. With a history as dark as mine, who could ever love this woman? However, Grace was correct. I did get along with Michael, and eventually, I looked forward to his visits. Our talks began with little topics like the weather and croissants and then moved into more in-depth discussions about our aspirations and, ultimately, our pasts. Michael turned to face me as we strolled across the park one evening, hand in hand, the fall foliage crunching under our boots. His normally witty eyes had a seriousness that made my heart skip a beat. "I know life hasn't been kind to you, Amy, but I want to be there for you and create new, happy memories," he said in a soft voice. I can still see my anxiety of being rejected in the past rising as I looked up at him. "Michael, my life is complicated. I have scars." He interrupted me by raising my hand to his lips. "We all have scars, Amy. It's what makes us human. I'm not asking you to forget your past, just to let me be a part of your future." That's when I gave myself permission to think that love may exist once again. Our love grew like springtime flowers, and before long, we were discussing our future as a family. The wedding was a straightforward event, but in my opinion, it was ideal. Grace was there, watching me go down the aisle with sad eyes. "To love you for who you are and who you will become," was Michael's promise, and it gave me hope. The arrival of our son, Jack, a year later, then our daughter, Emma, enhanced our delight. Their laughter flooding our house as they grew was a salve to my heart that had been hurting for a long time. Emma used to shout, "Mommy, watch me," while she drew or performed a dance move. Jack used to say, "Look, Mom, I can read this book by myself," and it always made me grin. My sanctuary during those years was a world apart from the suffering and hardships of my background. In addition to being my spouse, Michael was also my closest friend and my partner in life. I discovered my fairy tale in our little family. However, I've discovered that fairy tales don't always have the happy endings we anticipate. I can't get rid of the unsettling sense that another storm is approaching while I sit here thinking back on the past. But I'm not alone this time. I can weather any storm because I have my kids, strength, and the lessons learned from my experience. I was standing in the kitchen, the hardwood floor glowing warmly from the sunshine coming in through the window. I was holding the coffee cup I had made in the morning with shaky palms. Michael entered, his footsteps resonating more loudly in my chest than normal. I had a feeling that something was wrong. Trying to appear casual, I said, "Michael, is everything all right?" He hesitated, his eyes sidestepping mine. He remarked, "Amy, we need to talk," in a heavy, serious voice that instantly made me uneasy. I put down the cup and got ready. "What's wrong?" He inhaled deeply. Michael said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our life together, as his eyes finally locked with me. I had never noticed such a gap in them before. I pushed, my heart beginning to rush. "And?" he said. "I'm not happy, Amy. I haven't been for a while," with words that cut like ice through me. The room seemed to be whirling to me. "Not happy? But why? What did I do wrong?" "It's not you, it's me. I don't feel the same way about you anymore. I think it's best if we go our separate ways," he said almost automatically. My eyes filled with tears. "Separate ways? Michael, we have a family, we have children. You can't just decide this on your own." His face showed anguish as he cast a downward glance. "I'm sorry, Amy. I've made up my mind. I need a divorce." Divorce was a word that hovered in the air like a heavy fog. I extended my hand and took his arm. "Please, Michael, can't we work this out? For Emma and Jack?" He took my hand very gently. "I've thought about this a lot. My mind is made up. I'll always be there for Emma and Jack, but as for us, it's over." The world I knew was falling apart around me, and I was filled with despair. "Is there someone else?" was the question that was burning in my throat. After hesitating, Michael slowly nodded. "Yes, there is someone else." My throat tightened with a sob. "Who?" He remained quiet for a while. "It's Linda." Linda. The name felt like a punch to the body. Linda, my cousin. A torrent of memories of hurt and betrayal from childhood returned. I said, "How could you?" While experiencing a mixture of heartbreak, betrayal, and rage, he responded, "I really am sorry, Amy." But his words didn't seem sincere. Tears and entreaties clouded the talk. However, Michael's choice was definitive. A piece of me broke as he left, leaving me in the kitchen alone. The hard reality of betrayal crushed my vision of the beautiful existence I had dreamed of. I had no idea how I was going to tell Jack and Emma, or how I was going to handle the next several days. I just knew that nothing would ever be the same in my life again. The wonderful life we had created together was shattered when it was discovered that Michael had an affair and that he was filing for divorce. The unexpected invitation to Linda and Michael's wedding came in the middle of this chaos, as I was trying to piece together the pieces of my dashed hopes. This was a moment that had the potential to reveal long-forgotten facts and alter our lives forever. With shock and rage shooting through my veins, I stood there clutching the wedding invitation in my quivering hands. Michael and Linda's wedding. It was so daring that it made me gasp. Emma, my daughter, saw that I was upset. With a worried frown, she said, "Mom, are you okay?" I gave a heavy sigh and extended the offer to her. "It's from Linda and Michael," I responded, a hint of surprise mixed with resentment in my voice. Emma's face became stern. "You're not thinking of going, are you?" My son Jack came into the room before I could reply. He saw the invitation and said, "What's up?" His face contorted in revulsion. He mumbled, "Oh, this is sick." I was conflicted. A part of me wanted to disregard the offer and make no mention of that period of my life. However, a more powerful part of me wanted to confront them and prove that they hadn't destroyed me. When I eventually said, "I think I should go," even I surprised myself. Emma gave me a wide-eyed look. "Mom, you can't be serious." But Jack gave a slow nod. He said, "Maybe we should all go," with a playful twinkle in his eye. Emma noticed his tone. With a faint grin pulling at her lips, she questioned, "Jack, what are you thinking?" Jack moved closer and said very softly, "What if we could show everyone Linda's true face? Expose her for who she really is?" The notion sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. It was seductive, but it was also perilous. With the beginnings of a strategy taking shape, I questioned, "Do you think we can pull it off?" "We can, and we will," Jack resolutely said. The wedding day finally came. With my kids at my side, I entered the arena with my heart racing. The ceremony passed so quickly as our idea raced through my head. Jack nodded subtly to me at the reception. Now was the moment. He slid out of sight, and Emma followed him around stealthily. I inhaled deeply, attempting to slow down my palpitating heart. Jack's voice erupted over the speakers at that same moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" Everyone in the room turned to face the stage, where Jack was standing with a self-assured expression. Mikhail and Linda's faces took on a confused look. He said, "I'm Jack, Amy's son. I have something important to reveal about one of the newlyweds." Emma materialized beside him, a laptop in her hands. When she plugged it onto the projector, pictures and emails appeared on the screen, revealing Linda's deceit and machinations. The assembly moaned and gasped in disbelief. Anger burning in her cheeks, Linda got to her feet. She cried out, "This is nonsense!" Michael's face became pale as he studied the proof. He looked at Linda, his eyes full of incredulity. "Is this true? Linda, did you use me?" As Linda strained to explain, the indignant visitors drowned out all she had to say. I was filled with a range of feelings while I watched. Though I was relieved, my heart was shattered for Michael. The same deception had befallen me as well. The night air seemed lighter as Emma and Jack and I drove away from the wedding. The disorder we caused at the location was little in comparison to the upheaval I had experienced in my life. With a sense of pride rising inside me, I looked at my kids. Jack asked me, his eyes catching mine in the rearview mirror, "Mom, are you okay?" His worry was clear in his voice. I cracked a real grin, one that had been missing from me for far too long. "Yes, Jack. For the first time in a long time, I feel free." Emma, who was usually the more talkative of the two, laughed triumphantly. "Did you see Linda's face? That was epic. She got what she deserved." I nodded, albeit a little part of me missed the mayhem we'd brought about. We did what we had to do. The truth needed to come out. "Never one to take things lightly," Jack said. "It wasn't just about Linda. It was for you, Mom, for all the years she tormented you." When we got home, the truth of what had transpired started to set in as we sat in our living room. The children were talking about the events with excitement, but I was deep in concentration. Emma's words brought me back to the here and now. "Mom, you're zoning out. What are you thinking about?" I turned to look at them and sighed. "I'm thinking about the future, about us, and what comes next." Jack took a step forward, his face solemn. "We'll be okay, Mom. We've got each other. And that's all that matters." Emma tenderly squeezed my hand as she reached for it. "We're your strength, Mom, just like you've always been ours." Their comforting, love-filled remarks were a breath of fresh air. I know, my loves, and I'm so grateful for you both. I may not have had a fairy tale life, but I have something better. I have you two. Jack smiled. "So, what's the plan now, Mom?" After giving it some thought, I said, "I want to start fresh. Maybe I'll start that art class I've always wanted to. It's time I did something for myself." Emma's eyes glowed. "That's awesome, Mom. You're going to be amazing." As the room burst into laughter and future plans, I knew I had finally found my happy ending. My children's love and the inner power I discovered kept me alive, not a prince or a fairy godmother. I felt a sense of tranquility descend over me as I gazed about our little house as they carried on their conversation. It had been a long and painful trip, but it had brought me to this point, this happy place. Hello, I'm Elena. I remember sitting in an orphanage's dimly lit office the day my life changed. At the age of 7, I was holding a frayed teddy bear and experiencing immense weight on my little shoulders. With a creak, the door opened, and Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, my prospective adoptive parents, came inside. I had no idea at the time how drastically my life would soon alter due to them. Saying, "Hello, Elena," Mrs. Thompson said softly, like to a warm blanket. Her eyes were welcoming and friendly as she knelt in front of me. Unsure, I glanced skyward. "Hi," I said, clutching my teddy more firmly. She was joined by Mr. Thompson, a tall guy with a reassuring grin. He said, "We've heard so much about you. We've been looking forward to meeting you." I was at a loss for words. I knew not to anticipate too much from my past experiences. With a combination of terror and hope, my voice was almost audible as I said, Are you going to take me home? Yes, Elena, Mrs. Thompson said, softly putting out her hand to clasp mine. We want you to be a part of our family. The trip to their house passed in a flurry of skyscrapers and busy streets. I recall feeling like a character from a fairy tale when I arrived at this big, intimidating home. Everything seemed much too real. Mrs. Thompson smiled comfortingly at me as we went inside. You'll have your room, Elena. You can decorate it however you like. Mr. Thompson gave a giggle. And wait till you see the garden. It's got a swing and a place to plant flowers. I had a twinge of worry in addition to a little spark of joy. I hesitantly questioned, will I go to a new school? Absolutely, and we believe you'll adore it, Mrs. Thompson said. There are lots of kids to play with and lots to learn. Though I was interested by this new world, I missed the comforting noises of the orphanage. What would you like to do today, Elena? Mr. Thompson questioned her at breakfast the next morning. I gave a shrug. I don't know. What do kids do here? Mrs. Thompson chuckled softly. Whatever they want. We could go for a walk, visit the library, or you could help me bake some cookies. Bake cookies? I had never done it before. It made me grin to think about it. She said, yes, with sparkling eyes. Chocolate chip cookies, your favorite. I felt a warm sensation in my chest as I nodded. I felt a ray of optimism for the first time in a long time, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, things may be nice in life once again. And that's how my new beginning began, not with grandiose gestures, but with a family that wanted me and the promise of chocolate chip cookies. My adoptive parents, Anna and John, put me in a top school where I flourished under their tutelage and care shortly after they adopted me. I was ready to start a new chapter in my life and took with me the courage and confidence they had given me when I arrived on a university campus years later. I can still see my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety as I strolled around the busy campus of my institution in New York. The rustling of fall leaves and the buzz of students filled the warm September morning air. I saw a young guy with a cool grin and perceptive eyes as soon as I took a seat in the packed lecture hall. Daniel was his name, he said. He held out his hand and said, Hey, I'm Daniel. The first year? Indeed. My name is Elena. Isn't it all a little overwhelming? Shaking his hand in return, I said. Laughing, Daniel said, Tell me about it. Here, I feel like a little fish in a large pond. We connected right away since we loved classic literature and had similar majors. We enjoyed easygoing talks, and I sensed a connection between us that I had never felt before. Elena, would you like to grab dinner with me this Friday? Daniel inquired, looking up from his studies one day while they were studying at the library. I know of this nice little Italian restaurant. My cheeks began to flush. I tried to sound casual, but my heart was pounding. I'd love to, I said. We had a great time telling tales and laughing over supper. Daniel narrated stories of his upbringing, saying, My parents are real personalities. Dad is always engrossed in his work, while Mom is quite the social butterfly. How about you? His curious eyes gleamed as he said, Tell me about your family. I took a time to consider how much to share. When I was little, a kind couple adopted me. I chose to keep the specifics of my parents' money to myself, but I did say, They've given me a life filled with love and opportunities. Daniel remarked, That sounds amazing, and reached across the table to put a comforting hand around my own. I hope to meet them sometime soon. Daniel helped me walk to my hostel as the evening was coming to an end. Elena, I had a fantastic time tonight. Shall we try this again shortly? With a nod, I said, Yes, please. For me, my time at the university in New York was a mix of thrilling and intimidating events. However, in the middle of the mayhem of homework and tests, my friendship with Daniel sprung off like a rare winter bloom. He provided me with a peaceful haven away from the relentless pace of school. The sharpness of impending winter infused the air as we strolled over the campus one evening, Daniel's hand in mine. Our route was illuminated with a lovely color by the amber glow of the lamps. I stammered into the cozy stillness. Daniel, have you thought about how your family will react to us? Elena, I won't lie. My family can be challenging, but they'll see what I see in you, he said, giving me a gentle grip on the hand. Even though his comments were comforting, I felt a knot in my gut. But your family's so distinguished, and I'm just, well, me. Daniel came to a halt and looked at me with a sincere gaze. Elena, you're extraordinary. That's all they need to know. Daniel asked me to a family dinner the next weekend. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I stood at the magnificent Sullivan residence's doorstep, I recall. The sound of clinking silverware and chatting people enveloped us as we walked in. Daniel brought me to the dining room, where a large, beautifully laid table awaited me. George and Catherine Sullivan, his parents, were seated at the head of the table. Their stare at me seemed like an implicit condemnation. Mom, Dad, let me introduce myself. This is Elena. Daniel grinned. George Sullivan, a serious-looking guy, gave a little nod. Welcome, Elena. But Catherine Sullivan regarded me with great disinterest. So, you're the young lady Daniel's been spending his time with. A flush began to appear on my cheeks. Yes, Mrs. Sullivan. It's an honor to meet you both. Dinner was a dance of kind grins and uneasy exchanges. I could sense the pressure of their demands and the silent contrasts between their and my worlds. Catherine once asked Elena, "So, what do your parents do?" Feeling Daniel's fingers tighten around mine under the table, I paused. They passed away when I was young. I grew up in a different kind of environment. There was a noticeable change in the atmosphere. I see. Well, adversity builds character, they say, George said, clearing his mouth. The remainder of the evening was a haze of forced emotions and shallow conversation. Daniel said in a low voice as we were leaving, "I'm sorry, Elena. They can be a bit much." I forced a grin on my face, but I was becoming uncomfortable inside. My world and Daniel's seemed like worlds apart. Nevertheless, I held on to the belief that love would be sufficient to heal the rift. Our wedding was a short reprieve, a happy day in the middle of mounting stress, as I battled Daniel's family's icy attitude and tried to find my place in their exclusive world. The happiness wasn't long-lasting either, since I soon saw Daniel start to exhibit the biases of his family. The faint murmur of conversation and the clinking of fine china seemed far away as I sat at the neatly laid table. Daniel was talking animatedly with his mother Paula across from me, who would sometimes give me a snide look. I made many attempts to interact, but each time it seemed like pushing up against an immovable wall. At last, Paula turned to me, her sneer hardly concealed. "So, Elena, tell us about your family," she began, using the derogatory term family throughout. As I cleared my throat, I felt Daniel's hand beneath the table gently grip mine. Trying to maintain my composure, I said, "Well, I was adopted by a wonderful couple. They've given me a life filled with love and opportunities." Daniel's father, Marley, said with penetrating eyes, "And what did your adoptive parents do for a living?" As I remarked, "They're entrepreneurs." Daniel became uncomfortable next to me. "Ah, entrepreneurs," Marley said, giving Paula a sly glance. "Quite a vague term these days, isn't it?" A knot formed in my gut. In an attempt to sidestep their criticism, I said, "They've been quite successful in their ventures." Paula let out a chilly, derisive chuckle. "Oh dear, success is relative, isn't it? In our circles, success means influence, power, legacy, not just money." With a blush of humiliation, I bit my lip. At last, Daniel raised a solid voice in speech. "Mother, that's enough. Elena is my chosen partner, and I expect you to respect her." Paula squinted her eyes. "Daniel, we're just trying to understand the kind of woman you've decided to marry. It's our right to be concerned about the family legacy." The talk was getting out of control, and I was itching to get away. My voice trembled a little as I continued. "I don't think my background should be a matter of debate or judgment," Marley added, his voice acerbic. "It's not just about your background, Elena. It's about fitting into a certain standard. a standard that you, quite frankly, don't seem to meet. My eyes ached with tears, but I forced them away. I believe I should be judged by my character, not my family's bank account or social status. Daniel tightened his hold on my hand. That's enough, Father. If you can't respect Elena, then maybe we should reconsider our participation in these family gatherings. The only sound that shattered the silence across the table was Paula's mocking snort. Well, if that's how you feel, Daniel, maybe you should think about where your loyalties lie. That's when I got up, my chair squeaking noisily on the ground. With my voice hardly audible above a whisper, I murmured, I think it's best if I leave. Daniel got up beside me, his eyes displaying a mixture of worry and rage. Elena, wait. I'm sorry. They're out of line. However, as I was leaving, I could still hear Daniel's family's whispers and moans in my ears. My heart was hurting as I ran out of the room, not only for me, but also for the love that bigotry and pride were tearing apart. Sitting opposite me were my adopted parents, Jonathan and Anna, as I relaxed in the calm comfort of my living room, the twilight light creating long shadows over the floor. They seemed concerned and determined at the same time. Jonathan said, Darling, we think it's time, in a calm but kind voice. I questioned, a knot rising in my breast. Time for what? Anna grasped my hand by reaching across. Time to tell Daniel and his family about us, about your background. Anxiety rushing through me, I shook my head and said, Why now? They've already made up their minds about me. Jonathan firmly said, It's about you owning your story, Elena. It's not about them. You're not just an orphan we took in. You're our daughter, raised with love and privilege. They need to see the whole picture. However, they'll believe I've been dishonest. I objected. Anna gave me a tight squeeze. Let them think what they want. It's the truth, and it's high time they knew it. We ended up to Daniel's family estate the next evening. As we were led into the lavish living room where Daniel and his parents, George and Catherine, were waiting for us, the atmosphere was charged with suspense. George said, Jonathan, Anna, what a surprise, in a somewhat suspicious tone as he welcomed us. Jonathan gave a nod. We felt it was important to have a conversation. Eleanor's gaze became strained. Regarding, Anna said, It's about Elena, in a firm voice. There's something about her past that you don't know. Daniel gave me a confused expression as he peered at me. Elena, what's going on? I inhaled deeply. I was adopted by Jonathan and Anna when I was very young. They're not just any couple. They're quite well known in their field and well off. George and Catherine looked at each other. Curiosity piqued. Well off? George asked in return. Yes, Jonathan said in response. We've raised Elena in a world of opportunity and affluence. She didn't tell you because she wanted to be liked for who she is, not for her family's wealth. Catherine's expression changed, displaying a mixture of shame and surprise. You mean to say Elena is... With a steady stare, Anna said, Yes, she's a member of our family, our daughter in every way that matters. Daniel turned to face me, a look of remorse mixed with astonishment. Elena, why didn't you tell me? I gazed at him, feeling a sad heart. I wanted to be enough for you, for your family, as just me, not as someone with a wealthy background. A heaviness, awkward pause, and stillness descended over the room. When Catherine did speak, it was in a quieter tone. We may have misjudged you, Elena. George nodded slowly, his face showing reflection. It seems we owe you an apology. I looked at Daniel, expecting to see comprehension, but there was nothing to read on his face. At that moment, I understood that the discovery had fundamentally altered our relationship, and I also sensed that the future was unclear. But with the truth being out in the open, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. After my actual history was revealed, the days that followed were like traveling through a dense mist of pain and bewilderment. What was once our bedroom, now just mine, saw the morning light creep through the blinds. With the divorce papers still sealed on the dresser, I perched on the side of the bed. A gentle tapping on the door was heard. It was my adopted mother, Anna. "Elena, may I come in?" she said. "Yes, Mother," I said, my voice hardly audible above a whisper. Anna came in, anxiety and resolve mixed together in her gaze. She took my hand in hers and sat next to me. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" I shrugged, realizing how lonely I was going to be. "I don't know, Mom. It all feels so surreal. Did I make the right decision?" "Elena, you've always been strong and wise beyond your years. Remember, choosing to respect yourself is never the wrong decision," Anna added with a smile. I felt the weight of the divorce papers, as if they contained all the sorrow in the world as I lifted them up. I just never imagined it would come to this. Daniel and I, we were supposed to be a team. Anna gave me a tight squeeze. "Sometimes, love isn't enough, especially when it costs you your peace and dignity. I've seen how much you've tried, Elena." Once again, the door opened and Jonathan, my adopted father, entered. His normally cheerful expression had become somber. "Elena, your lawyer called. They need you to review and sign the papers today." A lump appeared in my throat as I nodded. "I know. I need a moment." "Elena, you're not alone in this. We're here for you, every step of the way," said Jonathan, who was sitting across from me. I glanced between my parents, their expressions a tribute to their unwavering support and affection. I just don't understand how Daniel could change so suddenly. He was always my protector, my confidant. People change, Elena, sometimes in ways we can't comprehend. But remember, you have your own strength, and you've always had it," Jonathan said. As I unfurled the sheets, the writing seemed hazy. "I guess this is it then, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another." Anna wrapped her arms around me. "It's going to be a tough journey, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together." I inhaled deeply before picking up the pen. Every blow seemed like shutting a door on a painful and loving past. I sealed my choice with my signature. Jonathan got to his feet. "I'll take these to your lawyer. You should rest, Elena." I stared out the window as they departed the room. Everything within had altered, even if the outer world seemed to be the same. I was setting off on a new journey, hoping it would take me back to my true self and the life I really deserve. I was sorely in need of a break after the chaos of my divorce. That's how I ended myself traveling to Italy on a plane with my adoptive parents, who had grown to be my rock. The bright Mediterranean light was a welcome change from the gray days I had been experiencing. My mother's words, "Sweetheart, you look like you're a million miles away," brought me back to the present as we were sitting in a charming cafe with a view of the Amalfi Coast. I forced a faint grin. "Just thinking about everything, Mom. It's been a lot." My father leaned across the table and covered my hand with his. "Elena, this is more than just a vacation. It's a chance for you to heal, to rediscover yourself." As I sipped my espresso, I nodded. "I know, Dad. It's just hard to shake off the past few months." "That's understandable," Mom said, empathy shining in her eyes. "But remember, this is a new chapter, one where you get to write the script." A server came over and refilled our glasses. A calming atmosphere was created by the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the salty sea air. "Dad? Mom?" I said tentatively. "I've been thinking about what you said about writing my own script. I want to start over, maybe go back to school or start a business." They shared a proud glance. Dad said, "That's wonderful, Elena. You've always had a sharp mind for business. What's on your mind?" "I'm not sure yet, but I want to do something meaningful, something that makes a difference." My mother gave me a tight squeeze. "You have so much potential, darling. Whatever path you choose, we'll be right here, supporting you." I felt lighter in the heart as we strolled along the cobblestone streets after leaving the cafe. It seemed like a feeling of potential and optimism was gradually replacing the weight of my unhappy marriage. Saying, "Look at this view," I paused to take in the sun lowering over the turquoise seas. "It's stunning," Mom agreed, "but not as beautiful as the future you're going to build." Those were words that spoke to me. I came to understand that my tale did not finish with my marriage. It was only a diversion from my path. For the first time in months, I was really laughing that night when we ate dinner outside. With love and support all around me, I knew I was headed toward recovery. It wouldn't be an easy path, but I was rediscovering the Elena who could handle the world with poise and confidence with every step. I was standing on our villa's balcony, gazing out over Santorini's tranquil beaches. The water was becoming golden as the sun began to set. John and Anna, my parents, came to join me, their grins beaming with joy. Anna said, her eyes mirroring the hues of the horizon, "Beautiful, isn't it?" I said, "It's stunning," my heart exploding with a tranquility I hadn't had in a long time. John encircled Anna with an arm. "Elena, we're so proud of how you've handled everything. You've grown so much." A warm tear began to trickle down my face as I grinned. "Thanks, Dad. It wasn't easy, but I feel stronger now. More myself. To be true to yourself is all we ever wanted for you." Anna embraced me. I felt my parents' strength and affection as I leaned into their arms. "I've been thinking a lot about what's next for me. I want to start fresh, maybe focus on my writing." "That sounds really good," John urged. "You always had a way with words." With a playful twinkle in her eyes, Anna questioned softly, "And what about love?" I chuckled quietly. "For now, I'm in love with life, with discovery. Maybe one day, love will find me again, but on my terms." John gave a nod of affirmation. "That's the spirit. You deserve someone who respects and loves you for who you are." Above us, the sky became darker, and the stars started to glimmer. I was relieved and ready to welcome whatever was coming next. "To fresh starts," raised her glass Anna. "To new beginnings," I said in a steady, upbeat voice. I realized this was more than just a toast when our glasses clinked. It was a pledge to myself to live fearlessly, really, and to always remember how valuable I am. Santorini was more than simply a vacation destination. It was a representation of my new, limitless future. "Hello, my name is Emily." As a 28-year-old born into a world where silver spoons were only the beginning, my life has been a voyage of contrasts. As a youngster, I used to enjoy exploring our house, where every room told a tale of prosperity and accomplishment. I was surrounded by luxury as my parents, self-made cleaning industry titans, took care of me. My father entered my room one evening as the sun was setting and cast a golden glow over it. "Emily, how do you like your new room?" he inquired, casting a quick glance at the opulent decor. "I'm in love with it, Dad," I said, turning in my chair to look at him. "It's like a princess's chamber." Sitting next to me, he laughed and said, "You deserve it, dear. But remember, true value isn't in these things. It's in your heart and mind." My mother came in, her grace equal to the grandeur of the space. "Definitely," she said. "We want you to have the best, Emily, but never forget the importance of kindness and intelligence." "I won't forget, Mom. I'll be smart, kind, and can I still enjoy my beautiful room?" I nodded, comprehending what they were saying, but yet in awe of the material world. My father gave my hair a loving ruffle while they both chuckled. "Of course, darling. Enjoy your gifts, but also make your own path. We've worked hard for this, and one day you'll understand the effort behind every shiny surface." My life lessons came from those evenings, which combined luxury, education, and love. I had no idea that the most important lessons were still to come. The calm areas of the library were always a source of comfort for me, since they allowed my thoughts to stray into the fields of strategy and mathematics. I found my genuine love there, among the muted murmurs of wisdom and the smell of ancient books. One afternoon, my friend Catherine interrupted me gently and said, "Emily, you're always buried in these books. Are you never tired?" Glancing up, I grinned subtly. When you're doing something you love, it doesn't become old. It resembles solving a puzzle. Every issue is a riddle that has to be solved. Catherine sat next to me, seeming interested. "What, then, is the enigma for today?" "It's an issue from the forthcoming Olympiad in mathematics," I said, gesturing to the intricate calculations scrawled in my notepad. "It's quite a challenge." Leaning closer, she looked over the symbols and numbers. She chuckled, saying, "Looks like an alien language to me." I laughed. "I guess it does, but once you see it, there's a rhythm and a pattern that makes sense. Catherine laughed and shook her head. You are the strategic genius. I'll leave the deciphering to you. I was having a chat when my math tutor, Mr. Allen, arrived. Are you set for our meeting, Emily? Yes, Mr. Allen, I excitedly said. He saw the issue with my laptop. Getting ready for the Olympics? Emily, you really are gifted at this. I've brought over some extra items that might be useful. I was excited as we descended into the realm of theories and statistics. The issues were difficult, but I loved the challenge and used my imagination to navigate the options like a dancer doing a difficult performance. As our lesson came to an end, Mr. Allen said, You have an exceptional mind, Emily. You have amazing strategic and pattern-spotting abilities. You'll do admirably in the tournament. At the praise, I reddened. Thank you, Mr. Allen. All I want to do is strive to please my parents. You've already shown that you're passionate and dedicated, he reassured me. Just keep in mind that the trip and the learning process are just as important as victory. Catherine nodded to me in approval as he walked away. Emily, you're going to ace this Olympiad. I am aware of that. Excited and determined at the same time, I closed my notepad. The Olympiad was more than simply a competition. It was a representation of the strategist I was growing into and a monument to my journey. My parents started preparing me for the family company as soon as I could read and write. After supper, our living room, with its lofty ceilings and luxurious carpets, frequently became an unplanned classroom. Dad laid up graphs and charts on sheets of paper on the coffee table one evening. With a tone that blended pride and severity, he said, Emily, it's time you understand the foundation of our success. I traced the lines and symbols with my eyes as I sat next to him. These are impressive, Dad, but they look like puzzles waiting to be solved. He laughed. He pointed to a line graph and said, In a way, they are. Business is about solving puzzles, finding patterns in the chaos. This here shows our growth over the past 5 years. Mom came to sit with us, a warm cup of tea in her graceful hands. Your father and I built this from scratch. We want you to know every part of it, not just the shiny exterior. I took in their remarks and nodded. I want to learn, truly, but it's a bit overwhelming. Dad put his hand on my shoulder. We'll take it one step at a time. Let's start with the basics of financial literacy. Understanding money is crucial. Softly said Mom. And remember, it's not just about making profits. It's about the people we employ, the lives we impact. I could relate to what they said, and it made the duty I was going to take on much more weight. I discovered this was more than just a business as I spent hours going over balance sheets and business strategies. It was a legacy, a reflection of my parents' perseverance and ambition. One night, I murmured to myself, more than to them, I won't let you down. Mom said, We know you won't, dear, in a confident and loving tone. You're going to write the next chapter of this legacy. I was filled with resolve as I saw their eager eyes. I was prepared to take on this task and become the heir they saw me as. As I began to understand the intricacies of our family company and felt prepared to carry on my parents' heritage, I had no clue that a personal tragedy would soon cast a shadow over my life and permanently alter my course. I can still clearly recall that day when everything seemed to stop. It was one of those cool fall mornings when the air is just beginning to turn into winter, yet still seems warm from summer. My father's voice interrupted the stillness while I was in the yard watching the dew on the roses. His tone was solemn, unexpectedly so. Emily, can you come inside for a moment? With a racing heart, I rushed inside. I found Dad in the living room, his hands shaking and his face pallid. What's wrong, Dad? I inquired. He inhaled deeply. His voice shaking, he said, It's your mother. She passed away last night. Breast cancer. I was struck by the words like a freight train. With tears welling up in my eyes, I stumbled. No, that can't be. We were going to see her this weekend. She was getting better. Dad shook his head slowly, his face wet with tears. I'm sorry, Emily. I thought she was too, but it was too late. The days that followed were a haze of rites and grief. There were so many people I hardly knew during the sorrowful funeral. As individuals expressed their sympathies, I stood there, paralyzed. A few weeks after the burial, I came upon Dad on the balcony one evening, looking off into the distance. "Dad?" I hesitantly walked up to him. He remained still. "I miss her so much, Emily. She was my everything." With just a whisper, I said, "I know, Dad. I miss her too." Red in the eyes, he immediately turned to face me. "You look so much like her, Emily. It's both a blessing and a curse." I was at a loss for words. Too genuine, too raw was the suffering. We stood there silently, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of our loss. Dad's anguish persisted for months, but it didn't lessen. I realized he wasn't in his room one morning. I called his name and went through the house in a panic. Then the unimaginable occurred. He was standing dangerously near to the edge of the roof when I found him. I ran to Dad and cried, "Dad, no!" However, it was already too late. I watched him step off the edge as I got to the rooftop. Time paused as, terrified, I raced to the edge of the precipice. I shouted out, "Dad!" with tears running down my cheeks. However, he was vanished, engulfed by the harsh earth underneath. I was overcome with sadness after my father and mother passed away tragically, and I had a hard time adjusting to a world that had abruptly changed. In this furnace of grief, I gradually started to put myself back together, turning my suffering into a resolve to carry on their corporate heritage. I recall sitting in my office in the faint light, bearing a tremendous burden of pain and duty. The family firm, which was now all mine, appeared to be an enormous task. My fingertips followed the contours of the firm ledger, a subtle reminder of the legacy left behind. My longtime friend and confidant Catherine softly came in. "Emily, you're hungry," she remarked, setting a sandwich down on my desk. I forced a grin as I looked up. "Thanks, Catherine. I can't focus. Everything reminds me of them." With worried eyes, she took a seat. "I know it's hard, Emily, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together." Although the hurt was lessened by her words, it was still sharp. "I just don't know if I can do this, Catherine. Run the business, be what my parents wanted me to be." She persisted, saying, "You're stronger than you think. Your parents prepared you for this. They believed in you, and so do I." Her confidence in me kindled a tiny spark of resolve. More to myself than to her, I whispered, "I need to make them proud, don't I?" "Yes, without a doubt. And you will," Catherine answered. "But first, you need to start taking care of yourself again. That's what they would have wanted." With a steady nod, I expressed my growing resolve, saying, "You're right. I'll start by going through these accounts, setting a new direction for the company. It's time to rebuild, not just the business, but myself, too." Catherine gave me a tight squeeze. "That's the spirit, and I'll be here, every step of the way." Since taking over the family firm, I've experienced a constant sense of purpose. My judgments were now repeated by the workplace, which used to be my father's realm. My assistant Mark said, "Emily, the projections for next quarter are ready," passing her a stack of documents. I looked at them, thinking quickly. With my eyes fixed on the graphs, I questioned, "These numbers? We can do better. Have we considered expanding into the newer markets?" Mark paused. "It's risky, Emily. Your parents never ventured there." I raised my head and saw his eyes. "But I'm not my parents, am I? Set up a meeting with the team. We need a strategy to break into these markets." Days went into weeks as we planned. I challenged the group, asking for bravery and inventiveness. In the middle of a late-night meeting, the unexpected breakthrough occurred. One of the senior managers, Lisa, said to Emily, "What if we incorporate eco-friendly practices into our services? It's a growing trend." Curious, I leaned forward. "Elaborate, Lisa." I saw a vision as she was explaining. Instead of merely growing the sector, we might transform it. "Let's do it. But we need to act fast. Be the first to hit the market with this approach," I said. The months that followed were quite busy. The new strategy's implementation was thrilling yet difficult. The day we introduced our new services, I got an adrenaline rush. This was a statement rather than just a commercial decision. The outcomes exceeded all of our expectations in terms of volume. Our customer base expanded, earnings skyrocketed, and the industry was abuzz with our creativity. I couldn't help but smile at the team's enthusiasm at a board meeting. We've not only met our targets, but exceeded them. This success is yours as much as mine. Later, with a grin on his face, Mark came up to me. You did it, Emily. Your parents would have been proud. Staring out of the window, I could see the city below me. I hope so, Mark. But this is just the beginning. We're going to take this company to heights they never imagined. After a series of fruitful business meetings, I found myself in London, a city full of prospects and an opportunity to broaden our company's global reach. I had no idea that this vacation would also unintentionally change the trajectory of my personal life by bringing me to a momentous encounter in the foggy streets of this medieval city. It seems like yesterday when I think back to the day I met Tom. Though the streets of London were teeming with activity, I could not hear anything. I was sitting on a convenience store step, looking at the sky, lost and without a working phone. A voice said, "Excuse me," interrupting my dream. "Are you all right?" When I looked up, I saw a man with a soft smile and friendly eyes. "I'm all right. I'm just a little lost," I stammered back. He held out his hand and said, "I'm Tom. Can I help?" There felt to be something unusual about Tom. His grin was sincere, and his presence was consoling. He guided me back to the hotel as we conversed. I felt like I connected with him for the first time in a long time since he was easy to talk to. "Here's my number," Tom remarked as we approached the hotel. "In case you need anything else?" I grinned and said, "Thank you, Tom," with warmth in my heart. "I just might take you up on that." The days that followed in London flew by. Tom and I got together often, joking and telling stories as we explored the city. There was a smooth, easy connection. However, I was aware at all times that I was concealing my genuine identity by constructing a web of falsehoods. One evening, as we strolled down the Thames, Tom said to me, "So, you work at this hotel?" "Yes." With a sinking heart, I lied. "Just a regular job." He answered, "I like that," with sincerity. "You're grounded, real." His remarks hurt, serving as a reminder of the front I was keeping up. My emotions became stronger the longer we were together. Even though I knew I was lying, the idea of losing Tom was too much to bear. I was lost in my own maze, and every turn took me more and farther from reality. "I have to go back to the U.S. soon," I murmured one evening, the truth partially spilling out. Tom gave me a sorrowful but understanding gaze as he stared at me. "I'll miss you, Emily." "And I'll miss you," I said, as I became aware that this was more than just a game. I realized then that I had to choose between facing the reality and carrying on with the deception. In any case, I was certain that things would change. I promised Tom that I would keep in touch following our chance encounter in London, but a part of me missed our bond that had developed overnight. I had no idea how quickly our brief meeting would develop into a shared existence under one roof, and how it would intertwine our fates in ways I never would have imagined. Tom has a side that I was unaware of until I moved in with him. Once a haven, our flat became a battlefield of spoken grievances and quiet judgments. The anxiety boiled out one evening when I was cooking dinner. With a swirl of the spaghetti sauce, I said, "Tom, can we talk?" He scarcely looked up from his phone. "About what, Emily?" "I feel like we're drifting apart," I whispered, scarcely raising my voice above a whisper. "About us." With his eyes fixed on his screen, Tom sneered. "Drifting apart? Emily, you're imagining things." I put down the wooden spoon, my resentment building. "No, I'm not. You're always distant, absorbed in your work. You don't even look at me anymore." At last, he turned to face me, his countenance icy. "What do you want me to say, Emily? That everything's fine? Because it's not. Ever since we got married, you've changed." I questioned, feeling a knot in my gut develop. "Changed? How?" "You're not the woman I fell in love with. You're always busy with your work, always calculating, he said. I became quite angry. Calculating? Tom, I'm trying to keep us afloat. I'm working hard for both of us. With a start, he got up, his chair scuffing the floor. No, you're working for yourself, Emily. You don't care about this marriage, about me. I argued. That's not true. But he didn't appear to hear me. He grabbed his coat and said, I need space, Emily. I need to figure things out. My heart began to race as I said, Where are you going? With those words, he left, leaving me alone with the sound of the boiling sauce and my own racing thoughts. Away from here, away from you. I need to clear my head. I was struck by the revelation as I sat there. Not only was our marriage falling apart, but it was completely destroyed. The toughest aspect was that I was unsure if it was still worthwhile to save. After our tumultuous marriage, I was suddenly surprised to learn that I was pregnant. Our relationship was starting to fall apart, so when this news arrived, I started to worry about our family's future. In the middle of this emotional upheaval, I started to direct my attention and energy into a detailed strategy that would settle scores in the professional sphere, where Tom and I had inadvertently turned into rivals, as well as ensure my child's future. A tiny, content smile played on my lips as I sat in my office, reading over reports and spreadsheets. Every figure and statistic served as evidence of the covert, calculated battle I fought Tom. Catherine came in and looked at the papers that were all over my desk. Are you actually following through on this? I raised my head, my eyes icy. At each and every stage, Catherine. He must understand the repercussions of misjudging me. She moaned, but it's really intimate. I reclined in my seat. Catherine, business is always personal. Recall that. Months passed into weeks, and everything went according to plan. I quietly put pressure, and Tom's business began to suffer. I stood by and watched, oblivious to my role in his demise, as he struggled with every obstacle. Then came the day when, feeling dejected, he entered my office looking for a job in the business he was unaware I owned. He was told to go to the head's office by the receptionist in order to make his appointment. His footsteps were getting closer, and I could hear them carrying a mixture of despair and hope. A phantom of the guy I knew was there when the door opened. There was a moment of astonished quiet as our eyes locked. Emily? His tone was a mixture of bewilderment and incredulity. Yes, Tom, I said coolly, keeping my gaze fixed on him. Greetings from my universe. However, I had thought... He trailed off as the revelation hit him. You did this? Everything? I got up and turned to face him, stepping around my desk. I built this empire, Tom, and I kept it safe from anyone who may want to steal it from me. A mixture of emotions, including embarrassment, realization, and rage, distorted his face. Was this an act of retaliation? Regarding the separation? Not just for the divorce atome. I nodded. For underestimating me and believing you were in charge of me. As though he was seeing the workplace for the first time, he surveyed it. I was unaware of this. I replied in a quiet but forceful voice. No, you didn't. And you made the biggest error there. With stuttering steps, Tom turned to walk away. I never knew you, Emily, he said, pausing as he got to the door and turning to face me again. I said to the empty room, No, you never did, as I watched him go. I felt a wave of closure. I stood amid the remains of a war I had won, but at a cost that weighed severely on my heart, following my well-planned retaliation against Tom. My path of self-redemption and focusing on the principles I wanted to instill in my pregnant child began at this critical crossroads, which signaled the start of a deep personal transformation. As I sat in my office, staring out at the skyline of the city, I thought back on how I got here. The only sound in the silent room was my fingertips tapping lightly on the wood desk. My trusty friend and coworker Catherine entered the room, interrupting my thoughts. Emily, how are you doing? Catherine questioned, worry etched on her countenance. I forced a grin. Yes, I'm simply considering everything. Life, you know. Catherine pulled up a chair. You've experienced a great deal, but have a look at what you've created. she said, waving. It's amazing. I know, but at what cost, Catherine? I nodded. There are moments when I question whether my unrelenting drive has cost me anything. You fulfilled your obligation, Catherine comforted. And you've consistently conducted business with integrity. That is the important thing. But now that I'm a mother, my role has changed. I lamented. My kid needs me to set an example for her. I want her to understand the importance of sincerity and honesty rather than simply commercial acumen and cold calculations. Catherine leaned forward. Emily, you serve as an inspiration. You are modeling for her self-advocacy, tenacity, and strength. I took a time to consider it. Catherine, I want her to grow from my faults as well. I want her to know that trust, not trickery or power struggles, is the foundation of a healthy relationship. Catherine grinned. Emily, she will, since you are there to mentor her. I got up and moved toward the window. Hopefully, her upbringing should be in an environment where she is appreciated and loved for who she is rather than what she owns. Catherine came to the window with me. Emily, she will. You will see to it that it happens. I cast my gaze below to the humming metropolis, a representation of my victories and setbacks. For both of us, Catherine, it's a new chapter. Catherine touched my shoulder with a kind hand. And it will be a fantastic one. You'll discover. Standing there, I understood that although I could not undo the past, I could create a better future for myself, my daughter, and everyone else whose lives I had impacted. It was time to leave a legacy of compassion as well as achievement. Hello, I'm Alara. I vividly recall how my heart leaped with excitement as I made my way down the aisle, and how my white gown's delicate rustling acted as a whisper of all the hopes and ambitions I had raised for this particular day. Nathan just stood there, his eyes shining with what I thought was admiration and affection. A few weeks into our honeymoon, the first fissure in our perfect world started to show. I had begun on the chore of arranging our budget, and invoices with the eagerness of a newlywed, ready to make our nest. I said, "Hey, Nathan," as I flipped through some papers. "I noticed your last 2 salary deposits aren't reflecting in our account. Did something happen at work?" Nathan, who was reading a magazine while relaxing on the couch, glanced up briefly, his face hard to decipher. He shrugged casually and said, "Oh, that. Yeah, they're doing some restructuring at the office. Pay's been delayed, but it should be sorted soon." I scowled a little as a persistent concern began to emerge. "Restructuring? You didn't mention that before. Is everything okay with your job?" He gave me a comforting grin, the one that always made my worries go away. "Everything's fine, Alara. Don't worry, it's just a temporary glitch. You know how these corporate things are." I was tempted to trust him. I had to trust him. I chose to ignore my worries and concentrate on the love that had united us. A couple more weeks went by, and my discomfort increased. Temporary problems seemed to be extending forever. I thought it was time to face the elephant in the room one evening while we were having supper. "We need to talk about the finances, Nathan," I said in a stern but kind manner. "I'm worried because your salary hasn't come in yet. We have commitments, and I can't handle them alone on my salary." A moment of stillness lingered between the two of us. Nathan let out a groan and put down his fork, averting his eyes from mine. "Ilara, I think it's time I told you the truth." "The truth? What do you mean?" I said, feeling a wave of fear sweep over me as my pulse skipped a beat. He inhaled deeply, and his voice was a mixture of guilt and hesitation when he spoke. I lost my job a couple of months ago, right before our wedding. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid of how you'd react." I sat there in quiet, taken aback. The words reverberated in my mind, each sound like a blow to the universe we had created. You were unemployed all this time? And you didn't think to tell me?" His voice was hardly audible above a whisper when he said, "I was scared, Alara. In my family, a man who can't provide is considered a failure. I couldn't bear the thought of you seeing me that way." I was filled with a raging tempest of anger, pain, and betrayal that threatened to overtake my love and trust for him. "Nathan, how could you keep this from me? Marriage is about trust, about facing challenges together. How can we do that if you're hiding such a crucial thing? His fingers trembled a little when it touched mine as he extended out. Nathan said, "I'm sorry, Alara," in a tearful voice. "I thought I could fix it before it affected us. I didn't want to burden you with my problems." "But that's the only thing, Nathan," I murmured, removing my hand. "They're not just your problems anymore. They're ours. We're supposed to be partners, remember? How can we be partners if you're keeping such important things from me?" Nathan had a downcast expression on his face, maybe due to dread mixed with remorse. "I know I messed up. I didn't want to disappoint you. You had this image of me, and I didn't want to shatter it." My voice trembling with passion, I replied, "But by not telling me, you've shattered something far more important, my trust in you. I don't know how we're going to get past this." His eyes eventually locked with mine as he stretched for my hand once again. "Please, Alara, give me a chance to make this right. I'll find a job. I'll fix this. Just don't give up on me. On us." I turned to face the guy I had promised to live a lifetime with, only to find him a stranger concealed behind a facade of lies and secrets. The future we had imagined seemed to be a far-off mirage that was vanishing faster and faster every second. "I want to believe you, Nathan," I said, my heart hurting. "But it's not just about finding a job. It's about honesty, trust. It's about whether we truly know each other at all." A profound sensation of doubt sprang over me as I turned to leave Nathan seated at the table. The future was obscured by uncertainty and deceit, making it difficult to predict. And that's when I saw that the ideal I had held in such high regard could have been nothing more than a dream, brittle and transient. As I dealt with the day-to-day difficulties of being the only provider, I started to feel burdened by Nathan's dishonesty and his mother's incessant demands. I had no clue my perseverance would be put to the test in front of the whole family at the forthcoming supper. Nathan's parents were hosting a family dinner, which was meant to be a happy event. In the hopes of leaving a positive impression, I had spent hours getting ready. The room was alive with chatter and laughing as we sat down to dine. I made an effort to interact, nodding and grinning, but my focus was diverted by the weight of Nathan's secret. Then, the main meal was presented, and Nathan grabbed everyone's attention by standing up with a glass in his hand. "I would like to make a toast," he said with a strong tone and a broad grin. I looked up at him, anticipating a thank you note or maybe a joke. Rather, what transpired left me motionless. "I want to toast to my incredible wife, Alara," he said. Cheers rang across the room, but his next words were like a stab to my heart. "Little does she know, I'm the true breadwinner of our household. My hard work keeps us afloat." There was a round of applause. My cheeks burned with perplexity and humiliation. Why does he lie? With my heart racing in my chest, I thought. I attempted to say something, but Nathan didn't seem to notice that I was uncomfortable. "You know, Ellara does her best, but we all know it's me who brings in the big bucks. She loves her little shopping sprees, all on my dime, of course. The chuckles became louder. I scanned the table for an alley, but all I saw were pleased expressions. My throat constricted till I was hardly able to speak. "Nathan, why are you saying this?" He gave me a wink, as if we were both privy to some inside joke. "Just lightening the mood, darling. Everyone loves a humble wife." Nathan's mother, Meredith, spoke out, her tone laced with irony. "Oh yes, we're so grateful to Nathan. Poor Alara. Where would she be without him?" The dialogue deteriorated, with every jest and jab striking me deeply. I felt smaller and smaller as I sat there with my food unfinished. Not only was the guy I had trusted and loved lying to me, but he was also making fun of me in front of his whole family. This was a betrayal of all we had worked so hard to build, not just a simple falsehood. I was so embarrassed during the family meal that I started to doubt my marriage and my own value. Nathan's sister, Sophia, came out to me at this vulnerable time, providing much-needed support and an unexpected viewpoint. Sophia has always seemed like a part of my universe, although one that is a little removed. However, I saw a shift in her as the days stretched into weeks when we were living with Nathan's family. She seemed more personable, even kind. Sophia and I finally had a heart-to-heart on a calm Tuesday night. Sophia entered the kitchen while I was sipping tea and lost in concentration. Hesitantly, "Ilara, can we talk?" she said. Surprised, I nodded. "Of course, Sophia. Is everything okay?" Her face was serious as she leaned on the counter. "I've been meaning to talk to you well, about Nathan and my mom." A knot formed in my gut. Trying to seem nonchalant, I said, "What about them?" Sophia exhaled. "I've seen how they've been treating you. It's not right. Nathan, he's not who he pretends to be. And Mom, she can be difficult." Looking down at my tea, I had a mixture of anxiety and comfort. I said, "I've begun to notice that." Sophia took a step closer, speaking in a whisper. "Ilara, you deserve better. Nathan has always been the golden boy in our family, but he's far from perfect. Mom has always doted on him, ignoring his faults. They're not good for you." My eyes started to water. I thought marrying Nathan was going to be the start of a happy life, but now I'm just so lost. Sophia softly caressed my arm with her outstretched hand. "I've been through my share of troubles with them too. I know it's hard to see now, but you're not alone. I'm here for you." Her words soothed my distressed heart. "Thank you, Sophia. I don't even know where to begin to fix this mess." "Together, we'll work it out," Sophia said. "But first, you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. Nathan and Mom, they're not going to change. You need to think about what's best for you." Although Sophia's assistance came as a surprise, it was the lifeline I much needed. I became aware of the more profound problems in Nathan's family thanks to Sophia's observations and experiences, which also let me know that I wasn't the only one going through difficult times. This realization gave me a renewed sense of purpose and made me consider taking drastic action to take back control of my life. I was sitting by myself in our poorly lighted living room with stillness falling over me like a thick blanket. My thoughts replayed the events of the last several months, a never-ending cycle of deceit and despair. I was burdened by Nathan's falsehoods about his work, the debt, and his mother Meredith's never-ending demands. As the mansion echoed with the sound of its grandfather clock striking 10, it served as a constant reminder that it was becoming late. Nathan's footsteps caught my attention, and soon I saw him standing at the doorway with a perplexed expression. I continued, "Nathan, we need to talk," in a calm voice that was laced with an obvious exhaustion. His brow furrowed as he entered and sat across from me. "What's wrong, Ilara? You seem different." "Different?" I said again, on the verge of mockery. "Maybe I am. Nathan, I can't continue living this lie. Your unemployment, the financial strain, your mother's constant demands. It's all too much." Nathan's face went from being perplexed to being protective. "I thought we were managing fine. You've been doing great, covering for us." Saying, "Covering for us?" made me chuckle bitterly. "No, Nathan, I've been covering for you, and for Meredith. I'm tired of being used as a financial crutch while you play house." His voice became softer as he leaned forward. "Ilara, I didn't want things to turn out this way. I was going to find a job. I really was. But things got complicated." "Complicated?" I said, raising my voice in echo. "You mean you got comfortable? Comfortable with me working tirelessly while you and your mother sit back and judge me?" Nathan extended his hand, but I drew back. "Ilara, please, let's not fight. We can work this out." My heart raced with a mixture of resolution and rage, asking, "Work this out?" "Nathan, there's nothing left to work out. I've made my decision. I'm going to see a lawyer about an annulment." His face became pale. "An annulment? Ilara, you can't be serious. We're married. We made vows." "Vows?" The word had a bitter flavor. "You broke those vows when you decided to deceive me, to use me. I'm done, Nathan. I deserve better." He got up and begged with his eyes. "Ilara, please. I love you. We can fix this. I'll find a job. We'll start over." I shook my head, experiencing an odd epiphany. It's too late, Nathan. I can't live with someone who sees me as nothing more than a paycheck. I need to find happiness again. And I can't do that with you. I got up and left Nathan in the living room, his cries going unheard as I moved on. It was time for me to make a fresh start and get out of this nightmare. The weight of what I was about to do was quite apparent to me as I sat across from Sophia in the little corner cafe that we had selected as our covert meeting place. However, I was filled with a resolve that had been stoked by humiliation and treachery. I blurted out, "It's unbelievable that I'm actually doing this," while idly stirring my coffee. Submitting an annulment. It seems so definitive. Sophia stretched across the table and momentarily covered my face with her hand. "You're regaining control of your life, Ilara. Nathan's dishonesty and his mother's avarice are not something you have to put up with." I nodded, feeling both empowered and nervous at the same time. "Yes, but it's unsettling. I have never previously confronted them in such a manner," Sophia whispered conspiratorially, leaning in to say, "Listen, you're not just standing up to Nathan and Meredith. You're establishing a standard for yourself. You're announcing that you won't be ignored." I exhaled deeply and slowly. "All right, I've already had a legal consultation. I'm giving Nathan an eviction notice and submitting an annulment petition." Sophia's gaze expanded. "A notice of eviction?" "Yes," I replied. "I'm taking back my space. I'm not merely cutting my connections. He must understand that he can no longer swindle me." Sophia gave a nod of approval. "What about Meredith, then?" With a tinge of newly discovered cunning, I gave a little smile. "She will quickly learn the truth. The truth will come to light when Nathan gets served with the documents." The following hour was devoted to talking about schedules, logistics, and possible responses. Sophia pledged to be there for me no matter what, and provided her steadfast support. I felt a feeling of camaraderie with Sophia as we were ready to leave, a kinship strengthened by hardship. "I'm grateful, Sophia. Without you, I don't believe I could do this." She smiled comfortingly at me. "You underestimate your strength, Ilara. It's about time they all realized that." I had a whirlwind of feelings going through me as I was leaving the cafe: exhilaration, dread, and, most importantly, a passionate resolve. I was prepared to take on the challenges that were ahead of me. The devious reign of Nathan and Meredith was about to come to an abrupt end. I felt it was time to bring everything into the open on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I entered Nathan's family living room, where a relaxed family get-together was in progress, and my pulse began to race. There, laughing and conversing, Nathan and Meredith were oblivious to the approaching storm. I cleared my throat, maintaining a steady tone despite my internal turmoil. "Nathan, Meredith, I have something important to discuss. It's about our marriage and the truth." Nathan glanced up, a glint of worry appearing on his face. "Ilara, what's going on? You look serious?" Meredith waved dismissively, one of her usual quick-witted conversationalist tendencies. "Oh, let me guess. More drama about money?" I inhaled deeply. "Actually, yes, it is about money. And honesty. Nathan, do you remember telling everyone how you're the breadwinner of our family?" With a smug look on his lips, he nodded. "Of course I take care of my family." I let out a resentful chuckle. "That's a lie, Nathan. I have been the one paying for everything. Your job? You lost it months ago, but you didn't have the courage to tell anyone." The space became quiet. A panicked expression replaced Nathan's grin. Meredith's stunned eyes grew wider. At last, Meredith said, "Nonsense. My son would never lie about something like that." Trying to gather his thoughts, Nathan stumbled and said, "Ilara, why are you doing this? Why embarrass us like this?" With a steely determination, I held my ground. "Because I'm tired, Nathan. Tired of the lies, the deceit. You let me support you financially, yet you humiliated me in front of your family, making me out to be the moocher." With a raised scream of rage, Meredith turned to face Nathan. "Is this true, Nathan? Have you been lying to me?" Nathan averted his eyes from hers, his silence confirming what was true. I went on, I've filed for an annulment, Nathan. And Meredith, you should know that the monthly allowance you so eagerly wait for, that was from me, not Nathan. Meredith's face became somewhat whiter, and she opened and closed her lips in a fish out of water manner. But why would you do that? Because I believed in a marriage based on mutual respect and support, not lies and manipulation, I replied with a stern tone. When Nathan did say anything, it was little more than a whisper. Ilara, please, However, I had had enough of listening. No, Nathan, it's over. I suggest you start looking for a job because I won't be there to support you or your mother anymore. I turned around and left the room after that, leaving the astonished stillness in my wake. Though my heart was heavy, I experienced freedom and clarity for the first time in a very long time. Though there had been a wide range of feelings in life following Nathan and Meredith, one feeling in particular stuck out: liberty. I had taken back control of my life, my money, and, most significantly, my sense of value. Sitting in my living room with the light shining through the window, I couldn't help but be happy with the tranquility I had discovered in being by myself. There was a peaceful stillness until the phone rang. It was Sophia, Nathan's sister, and a surprise ally for me throughout the upheaval. I smiled in response. Hey, Sophia, how are you? She would always say, Ilara, I'm good, just checking in. How are you holding up? With a warmth in her voice that I had learned to love. I twirled a strand of my hair and said, I'm actually doing really well. It's strange, but I feel freer than I have in years. I'm so glad to hear that. You deserve this peace, Ilara. After all that chaos, it's time for you. With a sigh, I felt like a burden had lifted. I never realized how much of myself I had lost in trying to please Nathan and Meredith. It's like I'm rediscovering who I am, Sophia said with genuine interest. That's the spirit. So, any plans for the day? I laughed and said, a little excited, Actually, yes. I'm heading out to a painting class. Always wanted to try it. Never had the time before. That sounds amazing. You know, you've inspired me too, Ilara. Seeing you stand up for yourself. It's made me reconsider a lot of things in my own life. Our discussion, which touched on goals, desires, and the need of speaking out for oneself, went well. In the beginning, Sophia's assistance had been like a lighthouse in a dark tunnel. Feeling a closeness that had arisen from shared tragedy, I offered, I should get going, Sophia, but let's catch up soon. Maybe over coffee? I'd love that. Take care, Ilara, and enjoy your class. I was overcome with thankfulness for Sophia as I hung up. Our relationship, built through adversity, had grown stronger. I cast a quick look at the blank canvas I had propped up in my room's corner, ready to be painted with hues and designs. It served as a metaphor for where I was in life at the time, a blank canvas on which I could draw my own conclusions and aspirations. I wasn't just heading to a painting lesson today, I was starting a new chapter in my life, one in which I would be responsible for my own happiness and decisions. Though the future held uncertainty, it felt liberating for the first time in a long time. I always felt that I was living in Sarah's shadow, even before I could comprehend the world around me. She was the younger, adored child, the golden child. As Lisa, the elder sister, I was just expected to be mature and provide a good example. Mom's voice would convey that firmness. Lisa, give your sweater to Sarah. It's chilly outside. I would object, clutching the plush material, saying, But Mom, it's my favorite. Retorting, without even looking up from her knitting, Don't be selfish, Lisa. Sisters share everything. With a sly smile on her face, Sarah would stand there, certain that she would obtain her wish. Not everything was sweaters. It was everything, including my dreams, books, and toys. I recall being at supper one evening. I was attempting to inform Dad about my science project as he was talking about his day at work. However, Sarah interjected as usual. She pushed her artwork in front of her father and screamed, Dad, look at the drawing I made. Dad's eyes brightened and he focused entirely on Sarah, saying, That's wonderful, Sarah. I felt invisible as I glanced down at my plate. Sarah's meager accomplishments at school made even my meager triumphs look meaningless. I asked Grandma, the only person who seemed to see me, later that night, "Why do Mom and Dad always favor Sarah?" with tears in my eyes. With a sigh, Grandma drew me into a cozy embrace. "Oh, my dear, parents sometimes don't realize they're doing it, but you must know you are just as special." I muttered, "But it doesn't feel that way," realizing how unfair everything was. She kissed my forehead and whispered, "You'll understand when you're older, Lisa. For now, just be the wonderful girl you are." However, I knew in my heart that nothing would change. My parents would always think I was second best, and I gradually withdrew into my own world, where I was free from the competition for love, while Sarah continued to enjoy their attention. Sarah and I shared a roof as children, but we lived in two distinct worlds. There was one evening in particular that perfectly captured our adolescent years. Sarah was lying on her bed in our shared room, leafing through a fashion magazine. "Look at this dress, Lisa. I wish I had it," she lusciously sighed. I looked over and saw the pricey brand. "You know how Mom and Dad are about spending? It's beautiful." "It's always easy for you," she sulked. "You are the ideal person." Feeling the familiar weight of being the responsible one, I shook my head. "Not really, Sarah. All I ask for is what I know we can't have." The sound of loud laughter interrupted our chat outside. Looking through the window, I noticed some boisterous teenagers, possibly from Sarah's class. I realized they were trouble, and my heart fell. "Sarah, are you really spending time with them?" I questioned, a tinge of concern in my voice. "Oh, come on, Lisa." She rolled her eyes. "They are merely pals. Additionally, you have a following of your own. However, those guys are not good. I've been told tales." Our mother's voice interrupted me to tell us to come down. There was a noticeable tension at the dining table. My father cast a harsh glance at me. His voice was forceful as he said, "Lisa, we heard you've been mingling with some questionable boys." It surprised me. "Daddy, I'm not—" Sarah innocently interrupted, saying, "Yeah, Dad, Lisa knows them. They spend a lot of time with her." I was shocked to learn that she was distorting the facts. "That is untrue. Not mine, but Sarah's buddies." My parents looked at one another doubtfully. "Lisa, we expect you to set a good example for your sister," Mom finally said. I was boiling with frustration. "But I am. Why won't you accept my words?" There was a long hush as dinner finished. There were miscommunications and unspoken grudges between us, despite my desire to connect and provide an explanation. I became aware of the glaring disparity in how we were viewed and handled that evening. It was a terrible realization of the gaps that adolescence had created in our sisterhood, chasms that would only widen with time. The whispers in my classroom seemed to reverberate off the walls as I strolled through the quiet hallways. "That's her," they would whisper, their gaze cutting right through me. I had the impression of being an outsider, a shadow moving through space without being noticed, or maybe too noticed. One day, Emily, an old friend, timidly came up to me. With an air of both embarrassment and anxiety in her voice, she said, "Lisa, can we talk?" My heart ached for our past friendship as I turned to face her. "Sure, Emily. What's up?" She shifted her gaze and said after a moment, "Everyone. They're saying things about you and those guys," she continued, avoiding eye contact. I let out a sigh, experiencing that same sense of annoyance. "Emily, you know me. I've been trying to protect Sarah, not hang out with those people." Her reply stung like a slap. "I know, Lisa, but it's just hard to believe when I see you with them every day," she said. Feeling the weight of my obligation, I protested, saying, "Because I have to. If I don't, Sarah might end up in trouble. You know how reckless she can be." Emily nibbled on her lip. "I want to believe you, Lisa. I really do. But it's just, everyone is saying—" I interrupted her, my upset voice clearly audible. "That's the problem, Em. Everyone is saying, but no one is asking. Not even you." She reached out and lightly touched my arm. "I'm sorry, Lisa. It's just so hard to know what's true anymore. I withdrew, encircling myself in my arms. With a voice that was almost audible, I said, I know it's hard, but imagine how it feels to be me. Emily cast a downward glance, her expression quite telling. I turned away from her and whispered, I have to go, as I felt tears prickling in my eyes. I accepted this as my new reality as I turned to leave, alone, misinterpreted, and condemned. I was now doubted by even those who were my world before. I crawled back inside my shell and found comfort in being by myself. Being by myself was easier than having to justify my innocence all the time. I found a terrible kind of freedom in that solitude, a freedom from judgment, expectations, and the difficult complexities of adolescent friendships. However, along with that independence came an intense sense of loneliness that served as a constant reminder that I was alone on my journey. I still recall the day I found refuge on the internet, a place where I was no longer merely Elizabeth's or Sarah's sister, but rather someone completely different. It was late at night, and my tiny, poorly lighted room was where I'd gone to hide from the criticism of the outside world. I nervously typed into a chat room as the illumination from the computer screen lit up my face. I hesitantly said, Is anyone there? In an instant, a response appeared. Yeah, I'm here. You knew? Asked a user going by the handle Skywatcher. I typed, my fingers trembling a little. I guess so. Just looking for a place to, I don't know, be myself? The following transmission from Skywatcher arrived soon. I get it. This place can be an escape. I'm Dave, by the way. I grinned, sensing a spark of kinship. I'm Liz. It's nice to meet someone who understands. Our discourse was easy to follow. Dave shared with me his passion for astronomy and his frequent sense of being lost in the grandeur of the cosmos. I talked about how much I adored reading and how it allowed me to escape from everyday life. You know, Liz, Dave wrote, in a world full of stars, it's nice to find someone who shares the same sky. I couldn't contain my laughter. That's pretty poetic for an astronomy nerd. He gave a happy smile in return. Guilty as charged, but hey, it's nice to talk to someone who doesn't judge. Our conversation went on for hours. I felt heard and seen for the real myself for the first time in a very long time. My tired soul was relieved by Dave's remarks, and I found myself looking forward to our next chat. It's possible that I made a friend in this virtual haven. More than merely Sarah's sister or a misguided teenager, I wanted a friend. A buddy who thought I was Liz. Dave and I became more than simply friends as we began to hang out more. The day Dave and I celebrated our 1-year anniversary is still fresh in my mind. We were alone ourselves in a quiet nook of our favorite cafe on a quiet evening. Lisa, it's unbelievable that a year has passed already, Dave remarked, his eyes glistening with fondness. As I sipped my coffee, I answered, I know, time flies. I've never been happier, Dave. He grasped my hand by reaching across the table. I feel the same way. You're the best thing that's happened to me. His touch was warm and made my heart skip a beat. My fear prevented me from telling him everything I wanted to, including my difficult family relationships and my estranged sister. How could he perceive me differently? Dave cut me off mid-sentence. Lisa, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. Yes? I asked, curiously looking into his eyes. Would you like to meet my parents? I've told them so much about you. It surprised me that someone asked. I said, I'd love to, but I'm a little nervous. Gently, he inquired, Why's that? I looked down and continued. It's just that, my own family, we're not close. It's complicated. Dave said, Hey, raising my chin to meet his eyes. You don't have to worry. You're not your family. You're you, and that's who I love. I grinned as a burden left my shoulders. Thank you, Dave. That means a lot to me. He squeezed my hand and said, Then it's settled. We'll plan a day to meet them. I answered, Okay, with a mixture of nervousness and enthusiasm. I looked out the cafe window, contemplating what was ahead. I believed that seeing Dave's family would help me get closer to the normalcy I so much wanted. I had no idea that life had different intentions for me. I had gone back to my hometown to help my mother select a wedding gown. Dave came with me. He'd already chosen his suit. Dave and Sarah found themselves alone in our family home while completely engrossed in the choosing. With a pale expression, my mother barred my path as soon as I walked inside the home. She whispered, trembling, "Lisa, maybe you should come in through the back." Confused, I said, "Why? What's wrong, Mom?" I avoided looking at her as she spoke. "Just trust me on this." I pushed by her and into the living room, ignoring her. The sight of Dave and Sarah in a vulnerable position on the couch chilled my blood. Dave stood up abruptly, his face flushed with remorse, and dressed assiduously as my sister smoked slowly, staring at me while clad just in her panties. "Dave? What? How could you?" I stammered out, a mixture of grief and incredulity. "Lisa, I can explain," stammered Dave, averting my gaze with his darting eyes. "Describe." Shock and betrayal caused my heart to race. When I turned to face Sarah, she simply shrugged and smiled. With my voice almost audible above a whisper, I questioned, "Really, Sarah? My own sister?" With a puff of smoke billowing from her mouth, Sarah said icily, "What can I say, Lisa? You always had better taste in men." A stab of pain shot through my heart. My mom moved forward, clenching her hands. She said, "Lisa, please, let's talk about this calmly." I yelled, "Calmly? She stole my fiancé," with tears in my eyes. "Lisa, I apologize, but it just happened," Dave remarked, sounding a little nervous. My voice trembled as the truth of the treachery set in. "Just happened? You destroy my life and all you can say is, 'It just happened'?" I said. I shoved past my mother and stormed out of the home, despite her attempts to step in. The outer world appeared to be spinning. I sat on the steps, hurt, angry, and incredulous thoughts racing through my head. How could they subject me to this? Sarah emerged while I sat there, lost in my confusion. Her voice was a gentle poison as she drew very close. "I liked your fiancé. I'll take him for myself, okay?" I turned to face her, rage blazing in my eyes. I shot back, harshly, "Of course, all you're good for is wearing someone else's discarded clothes." I didn't care. That offense twisted her face. I made up my mind and stood up. With those last words, I turned and left the house, the treachery, and the part of me that still hoped for a happy ending behind. I hate you all. This isn't a home, it's a snake pit, and I'm the only human. Monsters, all of you. I was crying softly as I sat on a chilly, deserted bench near the edge of the woodland. The stars were flashing clear in the night sky, unaffected by my broken reality. I heard footsteps getting closer at that point. A nervous voice said, "Excuse me, is everything okay?" When I looked up, I saw a young man with a worried expression on his face. His name tag said, James, and he was dressed in a gas station outfit. "Do I look okay to you?" I asked, a hint of resentment in my voice. He sat across from me at a polite distance. "I saw your car parked for hours. Thought you might need help." I gave a dry laugh. "Unless you can fix a broken heart, I doubt it." He was silent for a moment before continuing. "Fiancé issues?" "You could say that," I said, casting a sidelong glance at the wedding bands that remained on my finger. "Hello, I'm James," he introduced himself. I gave it a pathetic shake. "Lisa." For a short while, we were silent, and then he started talking again. "You know, it's not safe here at night. There's a small room at the station. You can stay there if you need to." I wavered. It was intolerable to think about returning to an empty flat. "Maybe just for tonight," I gave in. James stayed well away from us as we made our way to the gas station. He whispered, "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." I exhaled. "My fiancé, I caught him with my sister today." James came to a halt. "I'm sorry, I can't even imagine." When we arrived at the station, he showed me to a modest but tidy room. "It's not much, but it's warm and safe." I murmured, "Thank you, James," as a small amount of burden left my shoulders. He gave me a key in his hand. "Lock the door, and if you need anything, I'll be out front. I yelled, James? As he turned to go. With a questioning expression, he glanced back. Thank you. Really. He grinned, a sincere, friendly smile. Get some rest, Lisa. Tomorrow's a new day. Leaning against the door, I closed it and gave myself a time to catch my breath. After my breakup, I felt like the days passed in a haze. But then, James came into my life. Our initial exchanges were straightforward, but they soon became more complex, exposing levels of sensitivity and understanding I was unaware of. Sitting across from James in his comfortable living room one evening, I worked up the guts to go a little further into my history. James, I've been thinking about trust a lot lately, I said, a little unsteady in my voice. His eyes were friendly and warm as he glanced at me. Trust is hard, especially after what you've been through, Lisa. But, it's also the foundation of everything beautiful in life, he said with a smile. With a sigh, I felt as though a burden had been lifted. It's just that after Dave, I find it hard to let anyone in, to believe that what they say or do is genuine. James grabbed my hand by reaching over. Lisa, I get it. Trust isn't given easily, especially after it's been broken, but I want you to know, you can trust me. I'm here, not to repeat what you've experienced, but to build something new with you. I could feel his words resonating in the area of my healed heart. It's just, I'm scared, James. Scared of being hurt again. He gave my hand a comforting squeeze. I know, and that's okay. We can take this as slow as you need. No rush, no pressure. Just two people, learning to trust again, together. I saw the genuineness and warmth that had drew me to him when I gazed into his eyes. Thank you, James, for being patient, for being you. With a smile, he let out a small laugh. Lisa, helping you heal, seeing you smile, it's worth every moment. We're in this together, okay? I nodded, at ease with myself. I had optimism for the future for the first time in a very long time. I was gradually reestablishing my faith in James, and not just in other people, but also in myself. I laid beside James, thinking back on the voyage that brought me here as the first rays of sunrise began to trickle through the curtains. My heart was broken before, but it beat with hope again now. James said softly, his eyes still thick from sleep. Morning, Liza. I softly said, morning, in response. I was just thinking about everything. James held himself up on one elbow and gave me a serious look. Good thoughts, I hope. I grinned from the bottom of my heart. Yes, surprisingly. I was thinking about how much has changed since we met. He grabbed hold of my hand, his familiar and reassuring touch. You've come a long way, Liza. I've seen you grow stronger every day. I nodded, filled with a sudden appreciation. I couldn't have done it without you, James. You were there for me at my lowest. He gave a very little laugh. Well, I couldn't leave a damsel in distress at a gas station, could I? I laughed along with him when I said, that damsel was quite a mess. His correction was, a beautiful mess, and he leaned in to kiss my forehead. And now, look at you. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. I pondered the difficult times, the treachery, and the suffering. I used to think that what happened with Dave and Sarah was the end of my world, but in a way, it was just the beginning, wasn't it? James concurred. It was the beginning of your new chapter. Sometimes, the hardest paths lead to the best destinations. I felt at ease as I squeezed his hand. I never thought I'd be able to trust or love again, but with you, it feels right. It feels like home. James had a genuine look in his eyes. Liza, you are my home. Everything I've ever wanted is right here with you. Embracing him, my heart was overflowing. I knew then that I had arrived to my sanctuary, a place where the pain of the past no longer loomed large over the present. I had found a companion in James who not only understood the depth of my scars but also adored me, which was more than just love. With a firm, determined voice, I said, James, I'm ready to leave the past behind and start this new journey with you. Whatever the future holds, I want to face it with you. With a smile, he conveyed the optimism for our future together. Then let's start this adventure together, Liza. Here's to new beginnings. I felt the weight of my old problems lift as I became closer to him. I had moved on from being the heartbroken girl at the gas station. I was Liza, whole and loved and prepared to welcome a fresh day.